In this world of technology, things are ever changing, rearranging. You need someone to help you out. I know someone who can. Come and take a journey with me as we go through the land of technology. You'll never be alone. You'll be with Paul Amadeus Lane in the tech zone.
Welcome back to our third and final segment of the show. I am Paul Amadeus Lane. This is the Tech Zone, ABC News Radio KMET. Remember, you can always connect with me. Check out the podcast, YouTube, iTunes, iHeartRadio, you name it. We have you covered on all the bases, and we appreciate all the support that you give. In the beginning of the show, I talked about a first is going to happen on this program. The first ever diplomat joins me on the Tech Zone, and I'm so happy that he decided to clear his busy schedule to join me on the show. Let's get it going. And joining me right now is the Global Distinguished Professor at NYU School of International Relations. He served 25 years, veteran in Israel's Foreign Service, and to date, he served as the longest serving Consulate General in New York. We're talking about the very distinguished and awesome Ambassador Ido Aharoni. Mr. Ambassador, it is my privilege to welcome you on the program. How are you?
Very good. Thank you for having me. It's my honor.
No, it is my honor, sir. And you know, you and I have a mutual friend, and she and I was talking about tech. And being from California, everyone always talks about Silicon Valley being the hub of technology. But in our conversation, she talked about some of that great technology coming out of Israel. Now, Ambassador, that didn't happen overnight, did it? Israel's always been kind of at the forefront when it comes to technology, correct?
It's true. And I would say even more than technology, it's a knowledge-based society. And the reason why Israel is a knowledge-based society is because we inherited a piece of land that didn't really have too many natural resources, no oil, although all of our neighbors surrounded by oil. We only recently discovered natural gas. No gold, no special, natural resources. So that was the first element. The second element was obviously the fact that we were militarily threatened by our neighbors from day one. From Israel's very inception, we were threatened by our neighbors, and we were boycotted by our neighbors even before we became a state. The Arab economic boycott was enacted in 1945. It was enacted by the Arab League against pre-statehood Jewish settlement in Palestine. And that forced Israel, really, once it became a state, to develop two things: to develop the ability to become a producer not of products necessarily, but of conceptual products. It's a different thing. Product needs mass production. It's labor intensive, so we don't produce, and we never had the pretension of producing airplanes in Israel or even cars, but we will produce the technology that will change the way cars function, like Mobileye, like Waze. So Israel is a leading producer in an area called the production of conceptual products, ideas that really change the way the world functions. Instant messaging, for example, was invented by Israelis, and it's important to mention that because without instant messaging, the world would have been different. There is no Facebook without instant messaging as a technology. So the geopolitics of the region and also the DNA, the behavior of our neighbors, all pushed us to become a knowledge-based society.
And Ambassador, when we look at the challenges that face the region over there, and just the resiliency of the ones who live over there, that's really a testament to not giving up and making sure that we're going to do this. We have this mindset. We're going to do it. And look at some of the things that come out of it. You talked about instant messaging. I don't think a lot of people out there who use instant messaging who are listening right now had no idea of that. And that's why I love this platform, to be able to give the knowledge, give the information of just the background behind some of these things.
Right. So, the first cellular phone was invented by engineers working for Motorola, Israel. Today, every major American tech company has a presence in Israel. Microsoft, for example, is holding its largest R&D center anywhere in the world outside of the United States in Israel. Same thing goes for Intel, same thing goes for Apple, same thing goes for Oracle, and go on and so on and so forth. Israel sends the second or the third largest contingent to NASDAQ, which is an incredible statement because we are a nation of less than 9 million people. And you have more Israeli companies traded on NASDAQ than most nations in the world, including nations that are 100 and 150 times bigger than Israel. Israel is the largest producer of scientific papers per capita, the largest publisher of patents in the world per capita. And these are all things that point to one thing that is really the overarching principle above it all, and that's the ability to nurture and cultivate human creativity. So it's important for me to note, for the benefit of our listeners, that Israeli creativity goes beyond high tech. So it's true that most people mention Israeli creativity and Israeli innovation within the framework of technological advancement, of technological breakthroughs, software, to a lesser degree, electricity, electronics, hardware, engineering. Very few people talk about Israeli creativity in other walks of life, in other aspects of our lives. But Israeli creativity is manifested across the board. You're based in California. It's important for our listeners to know that Israel is one of the largest providers of content to Hollywood, to the American film industry, and to the American television industry. We're making our contribution in the form of exporting formats like, Homeland is a format that was developed in Israel, or the actual show like Fauda, which you can watch nowadays on Hulu. That's an actual Israeli show on American television. You have individual Israeli talent that is working and doing extremely well in Hollywood, from people on the big screen, like recently Gal Gadot is a superstar from Israel, but also people that make contribution as screenwriters, right? We have the ABC series The Affair was co-written by an Israeli guy by the name of Hagai Levy, and so on and so forth. I can give you many, many examples of how Israeli creativity is manifested beyond high tech.
And Ambassador, when we look at the creativity, and we have California, United States, we have Israel. Do you think that being in the United States, that a lot of creativity is being stifled maybe because of regulations that don't exist out in Israel, and that's why we see kind of like, this explosion of creativity in Israel? What's your take on that?
I think that actually tension, and that's the reason why melting pot societies tend to be more creative, right? So you go to places that are multi-ethnic, like Toronto, like Tel Aviv, like New York City, like Los Angeles, like San Francisco, and you see a lot of creativity because tension really is the engine that drives human creativity. And when I say tension, it doesn't have to be negative. Tension was the kind of relationship that existed between Lennon and McCartney, right? It was a magical tension between them that produced great music. And so tension doesn't have to be a bad thing. Tension is something that exists whenever you have friction between people that are not similar. And we know that every person is different than the next. In our case, it also has a lot to do with our Jewish tradition. Judaism is unique in the sense that Judaism is allowing you to challenge authority, to argue, to refuse to accept limitations, to ask questions all the time. We have a concept in Judaism called the Talmudic dispute. The Talmudic dispute is based on the permission that you have to challenge every assumption, even the most basic assumptions. And when you have that as part of your DNA, as a people, as a culture, it becomes easier to conceive that ecosystem that we have now in Israel that is so thriving.
Well said. Well said. And Ambassador, Israel has really been on my radar for the past 25 years. I was involved in an automobile accident that left me a quadriplegic and confined to a wheelchair. A few years after Christopher Reeves had his tragic spinal cord injury. And I know before he passed away, he spent a lot of time in Israel because of the different medical technology and the different treatments over there. So it's always been close to my heart, following the things that are happening in Israel. And when we look at even the strides in medical advancement, let's talk about that and how really Israel is kind of like leading the race when it comes to that.
Right, and I think one of the reasons it's happening in Israel is because the Israeli political system is not intervening with research. So it is less regulated. So for example, stem cell research. This is the main reason why the late Mr. Reeve was fascinated with Israel. He was particularly fascinated with the work of a woman by the name of Michal Schwartz from the Weizmann Institute of Science. In fact, I had the privilege of going to meet with him before he left New York to Israel. And we met at his home in Bedford, New York. And we spoke with him about how he heard of Dr. Schwartz. And he told us that he would read in scientific publications about neurology. And he just read about her research. He felt that if there was a chance for him to ever walk again, she is holding the key. And he was adamant to go to Israel and meet with her and to tell the world the story of the amazing research that she is conducting. But of course, she's not the only researcher who's at the cutting edge of neurology research. We have many Israeli scientists who are doing amazing things in this arena. So the reason why he was attracted to Israel is because in Israel, scientists are free to study. Let me give you another example. We mentioned stem cell research, but also botanical medicine research in Israel is free of all the political constraints. What you call in America cannabis. In Israel, it's called botanical medicine. And universities in Israel, we have several universities, are considered to be at the forefront of medical research on this issue. And the working assumption here is that cannabis, if you set aside the whole recreational aspect of it and the negative associations, cannabis is a valuable material in nature that can produce many things that can do good, that can help people ease pain, and so on and so forth.
Wow. Well said, Ambassador. I'm glad I brought that up because I had no idea that you and the late great Mr. Reeves knew each other and had a conversation about that. And when it comes to, let's say, education in Israel, are the children there educated at a young age to use that creative mind? Because we know the school system over here in the United States is a little bit different from over there. Well, what's kind of like the mindset when children are in school over there to get that creative mind going, even through the teenage years to adulthood?
Well, it really is about the cultural DNA, because the American school system, even the public school system, has better tools than the Israeli school system, is better positioned to give the student more attention, right? In Israel, the average number of kids in the class is over 40. Here in America, and I had my kids schooled in America, I know the situation is much better, even in public schools, in the public school system, not only the private school system. But by and large, the American educational system is richer than the Israeli educational system. It's better positioned to provide students with the tools that they need, especially the physical tools. The only difference is in the cultural DNA. So Israeli kids are being taught from day one that it's okay to ask questions. It's okay to disagree.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay to argue. And sometimes, what we do is being perceived in other cultures as disrespectful. Sometimes it's being perceived as aggressive, as abrasive, as arrogant. And it may be all true because it's in the eye of the beholder. If someone sees me as an arrogant person, and this is who I am, then there's not much I can do about it, right?
Absolutely.
But it's just like any other case of learning what we call cultural sensitivity. One thing that is accepted in one culture is completely banished in another culture. And so the same thing goes for that permission to ask questions. And so a lot of people say, there's a term in Yiddish that New Yorkers here know very well called chutzpah.
Yeah.
Right? Chutzpah is audacity.
Yeah.
So in Israel, you're born with it, right? It's part of your DNA. And a lot of people think that it's arrogant, it's abrasive, it's aggressive, and so on. But that really is the story of the difference that exists between Israeli kids and kids in other places.
That kind of reminds me of a New York-based rapper, Jadakiss. In one of his songs, he said, I'm not cocky, but I'm confident. You know what I mean? So sometimes people take confidence as being cocky, and I'm glad you definitely expounded on that. And Ambassador, let's talk about your organization, Emerson Rigby, and talk about what your organization is all about, and what's the mission of that organization.
Well, Emerson Rigby is a consultancy. It's a consultancy that really puts to work all the things that I learned in 25 years when I served the public. And I've seen so many human enterprises fail. And I asked myself the inevitable question, why so many people fail? Why most restaurants don't survive to be 5 years old? Why 95% of the startups fail? Why most organizations fail, and so on and so forth. And I discovered that the main reason for it is what we call human reflexivity. What is human reflexivity? Is the natural tendency that we have when we identify a need, when we identify a certain problem. We have a tendency to conceive a solution and then jump right to the execution of it. So we become, because of the fact that we are a society of immediate gratification, we become preoccupied, not to say obsessed, with the need to immediately implement solutions. So we're a solution-oriented society. The problem is that very human nature is the main reason why we fail. Mm-hmm. Because what we actually should do before we jump to implementation is implement a step-by-step approach that minimizes risk and enhances chances of success. And that system, I call it the R-SWIM. This is what my consultancy specializes in. What is the R-SWIM? It's a methodology that allows you to propel forward, to grow safely without taking any risks. And it's based on 5 stages that have to be taken. There are no shortcuts. The first R stands for research. Before you do anything, you have to know what is it that you bring to the table. So the purpose of the research is really to answer the question of who am I? What is my value proposition? The S stands for strategy. Strategy has to evolve from the research. And the strategy is meant to answer the question, where would I like to be? What is going to be my overarching guiding principle? Everything that I do from now on. Where would I like to be as an organization, as a restaurant, as a startup 20 years from now? The W stands for work plan. Work plan is the practical implementation of the strategy. Everything that we do has to be informed by the strategy, but the work plan has to support the strategic concept, right? So you can't say, I'm about music and invest in infrastructure that supports horse racing. It's not going to work. If you're about music, then you have to be about music. Then your infrastructure has to support that strategic claim. Only then, after you did your research, you crafted your strategy, you designed your work plan, only then you go to the implementation. And guess what? If you did the three parts, the three initial stages correctly, the implementation should be a very easy process. And then after the implementation comes the M, which stands for measurement. How well am I doing? Our late mayor here in New York, Ed Koch, was famous for asking, how am I doing? And basically he was measuring in a non-scientific fashion, but he was measuring his success, asking people, how am I doing? And he received real feedback, by the way. People told him, people used to tell him exactly what they felt. These are New Yorkers we're talking about here. So if you do all five things, strategy, work plan, implementation, measurement, you may end up going back to the research because you need to recalibrate the goals, you need to recalibrate the methodology. Then your chances of propelling forward, of growing, of succeeding are much higher. So this is really what I do with Emerson Rigby. This is what I teach here at NYU. It is for businesses, it is for governments, it is for municipal governments, for nonprofit, for for-profit. Everybody can benefit from the R-Swim package.
And I appreciate you going into depth with that because, I really see where a lot of different challenges we have here with different startups, different companies. Living in the United States is always instant gratification. Everybody wants to do it fast, but there's no shortcut, Ambassador. As you articulate, I mean, we have to put in the work, and if we put on the work, we definitely maximize, the success that we could have.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the whole key is really not to fail. There's a tendency in our culture now to glorify failure. And people say, oh, failure is something that brings you closer to success. I agree, philosophically speaking, it's true. But why fail if you can avoid it?
Absolutely. That makes a lot of sense because I tell you, I've been failing at trying to get fit and lose weight for years, and I haven't celebrated that. I'm looking to succeed and win. That's what I'm going to do. So, Ambassador, before we let you go, is there anything else you'd like to articulate about Israel, about some of the great things happening out there? Anything else you'd like to explain to our audience?
Well, I'm assuming your audience is mostly Californian-based, right? I just want them to know that I served in Los Angeles. My wife is from Los Angeles. My kids, my son was born in L.A. I've been to Riverside County many times. I spoke at the university there many, many times. I love this place, this part of the world. We have a very, very special bond between Israel and the Inland Empire, as you call it. And I just wanted to send my warmest regards to all the listeners.
Really appreciate it. And we will definitely do that in some of our international listeners who check us out via our streaming service too. I know they're going to be shocked when they hear this interview with you and I together. Yes, I know some big heavyweight people out there and some diplomats. Yes, I do. And before I let you go, let's talk about your blog that ones can subscribe to on Newsmax.
Yes, so I have a blog called The Age of Information. It's on Newsmax, which is the third largest news website in the United States with in terms of traffic, with some of the most amazing writers publishing there. And what I do in my blog, I write about the impact of the information revolution on our lives. I touch upon the phenomenon called place branding. How do you improve the performance of a place, whether it's a county or a city or a nation or a continent? I talk a lot about the impact of technology on our ability to self-design our own information echo chamber. And I talk a lot about what the technological revolution is doing to the consumer end of the equation. A lot of people talk about the production end of the equation. Very few people actually bother to study and talk about and write about what is it doing to the consumer, who we now know sees himself, herself, more of a co-producer of information, not only a passive consumer of information.
Well said. And make sure you check out that blog on Newsmax. So you guys definitely support Ambassador Aharoni and all the great things that he's doing. Ambassador, it has been an honor and a privilege to have you join me on the show. I'm going to get some style points for having you on, my friend. And thank you so much. And we love to have you back later on in the year as well.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
I'd like to thank once again the distinguished Ambassador Ido Aharoni for joining me on the Tech Zone, talking about the technology in Israel and just the drive behind the ones creating that technology and how we can learn a lot from it too. And he did the unexpected too. When I asked him about his company, he gave us some great advice out there. If you are a techpreneur, entrepreneur, if you're trying to create a startup, listen to that. He gave us some knowledge that we can use and put into place. So happy we were able to pull that off. My great friend Hillary, thank you, my dear, for setting that up. Really appreciate it. All right, that's the end of our show. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you tune in next week for some more great tech news and some great innovation and just other things I'm sure you'll find interesting. Until next time, talk to you soon.
In this world of technology, things are ever changing, rearranging. You need someone to help you out. I know someone who can. Come and take a journey with me as we go through the land of technology. You'll never be alone. You'll be with Paul Amadeus Lane in the Tech Zone.